Hi, guys. I know it's been a few days. I was out of town for the weekend, but I couldn't wait to get back and read you another few pages of our book. So, if you've been following along, and if you hold on one second, the computer's moving on me. Let's see if I can fix it here. Okay. I think that might work. Okay, if you've been following along with the videos, you know that when we left off, Rainy and Sticky were told by SQ that it was their turn to head to the Whispering Gallery. And they were kind of shocked that their turn had come up so quickly. And if you remember, right before he left their room, Rainy said that he just needed to write something down that he didn't want to forget. And so when we left off, SQ was telling the boys to hurry and get dressed because they didn't want to keep Mr. Curtin waiting. And that's at the top of page 416 if you're following along with your book. So here we go. The boys threw on their clothes and followed SQ out the door. In the corridor, a few weak-kneed, pasty-faced students were making their way to and from the bathrooms. And a group of silent helpers worked double duty trying to keep the floors mopped. SQ, cheerful now that he'd made up for his earlier blunder, smiled and patted the miserable students as he walked past. Hang in there, chins up, look on the bright side. It could always be worse. The trip to the Whispering Gallery didn't seem nearly long enough. The blindfolding, the walk to the secret entrance, the exhausting climb up countless steps, all of it seemed to pass in one excruciating instant. Then SQ was removing their blindfolds and pressing the intercom button. Reynard Muldoon and Sticky George Washington here for their sessions, Mr. Curtin. Mr. Curtin's voice came through a speaker. They must wait. Meanwhile, bring me more juice. In his most authoritative tone, which was not very authoritative, SQ ordered the boys not to stir from that spot. After they assured him that such a thing would never have occurred to them, he hastened back down the steps. Let's run, Sticky whispered. No, listen, we still have a chance, Rainy said. You have to go first, Sticky, and make your session last as long as you can. If you resist the whisper at the very beginning, while you still have the strength, you might be able to stretch out the session. Sticky's jaw dropped. Resist it, but Mr. Curtin will suspect something. He'll notice it. You know he will. He'll send me back to the waiting room. Sticky began to shake all over. He'll turn the whisperer on me. I'll be brain swept. I know the risks, Rainy said, but this is our only shot. Sticky's horrified expression shifted into one of anger. Oh, why don't you go first then? Why don't you be the one to resist it, if you're so brave? I need to try and send some signals to the girls, Rainy said. He grabbed Sticky's arm. We can still do this, Sticky. Sticky looked doubtful, even suspicious. How do you propose to signal the girls? How? The Whispering Gallery door slid open, and Martina Crow came out. Her expression pleasantly but befuzzed. She was so content she almost didn't even bother to sneer at them. Almost. But then she stopped and made an effort. Rainy returned the sneer with his best fake smile. Did you just have a session with the Whisper? I thought you were an executive now. I'm such a young executive, I can still do messenger work in a pinch, Martina boasted, and this is definitely a pinch. I've never seen so many upchucking kids in my life. You haven't gotten sick? Sick of being hungry is all. I was so busy capturing that spy last night that I missed supper. That's the price you pay for being an executive, doing important work. Not that you boys would know anything about that. With an immensely self-satisfied and condescending expression, Martina walked on, saying over her shoulder, Hurry on in, boys. I'm off to another duty. You'll notice I don't have to wear a blindfold either." The moment she was out of earshot, Rainey whispered, "You have to trust me on this, Sticky. To give us a chance, you have to go first. It's our only hope." "Boys, get in here," Mr. Curtin called. Rainey tried to make one last plea to his friend, but Sticky turned and plunged into the whispering gallery without looking back. Rainey had no choice but to follow. Taking a deep breath, he walked into the whispering gallery, where his breath escaped like air from a balloon. There it was, the whisperer. Rainey's eyelids fluttered. Stepping into his presence was like stepping into a warm bath. He wanted to take his seat in it and never climb out. "You have to fight," Rainey told himself, and with great effort he tore his eyes from the seductive machine to look at Mr. Curtin. Mr. Curtin seemed tired but eager. "Welcome, boys. I trust you are fully recovered, and you have your strength up." "Yes, sir," the boys said together. "I hope so. Only a tiny handful of messengers have recovered, and I've worn them all out. You saw I resorted to using an executive, a rare thing, as older children are much less effective. But I've been put off my schedule and am raging against the delay. If only this infernal stomach sickness hadn't emerged, my project would already be complete." "Sorry to hear that, sir," said Rainey. "No matter, my young friend. The problem will soon be rectified, for I intend to finish right now." Rainey sucked in his breath. You mean, you mean, Sticky stammered. "I see you are quite tongue-tied by the honor. That's right, George. You boys shall personally preside over the completion of my project. If all goes well, that is." Both boys forced weak smiles. Mr. Curtin clapped his hands together. "Now here is our task. First we shall have a last session devoted to old material, the last of the lessons. Then we shall have a session of entirely new material, material hot off the presses." Mr. Curtin waved his journal triumphantly. "I have just completed it." Rainey tried to stall. "Shouldn't we take some time to study it, sir?" "No, Reynard. In this case, simplicity is essential. My whisper is designed to soothe troubled minds, and nothing soothes the mind more effectively than a simple answer to a complicated problem." "Mr. Curtin, sir," Sticky asked, "do you still plan to close the institute?" At this unexpected question, Rainey glanced sharply at Sticky. Was he stalling too? Or was it the opposite? Had Sticky already given up? Mr. Curtin chuckled. "Don't worry, George. I haven't forgotten you. The other students will be sent home tomorrow. I have chosen to enter a higher calling and will be serving the public in a much grander capacity. But I have you boys in mind as personal assistants, to be groomed as executives as you mature." You really do want us then?" Sticky asked. "But of course I do," Mr. Curtin said, with an encouraging smile. "I could use you both, and the sooner the improvement begins, the sooner you'll begin your new life. What better motivation to perform well?" Sticky's lip quivered. "I'm here with the juice, sir," SQ's voice called through the intercom speaker. "Finally," Mr. Curtin grumbled, his smile instantly vanishing, as fake smiles often do. He pushed a button on the arm of his wheelchair. Rainey, who had been watching Sticky in bleak despair, noted which button Mr. Curtin pressed. If Kate and Constance managed to come, he could open the door. But what were the chances of that? First, Sticky would need to resist Mr. Curtin's invitation. And with the pull of the whisper so powerful, with Mr. Curtin so likely to succeed, could Rainey hold out hope for this? SQ brought their juice and tricked out again. Mr. Curtin sipped from his paper cup with an expression of eager contemplation. And then the moment arrived. Very well, Reynard. Let's improve the world. You may take your seat in the Whisperer. Rainey stared pleadingly at Sticky, whose expression was impossible to read. What was going on in his head? As it happened, Sticky himself did not know. There had been times in Sticky's life when an important question would flummox him, no matter how well he knew the answer, and times he had run away from his problems, and times when he felt himself paralyzed when action was needed. He'd never understood this tendency of his. He knew only that he rarely lived up to expectation, and for this reason had clung so fiercely to his nickname. Any boy with a name like George Washington must surely have great things expected of him. And yet, in these last days, he'd become friends with people who cared about him, quite above and beyond what was expected of him. With perfect clarity, he remembered Rainey saying, "I need you here, as a friend." The effect of those words and of all his friendships had grown stronger and stronger until he couldn't say why he didn't feel mixed up now. At the most desperate moment yet, he knew it to be true. There was bravery inside of him. It only had to be drawn out. So it was that Sticky stepped right in front of Rainey and said, "May I go first, Mr. Curtin? I've been looking forward to this ever since my last session." So we did it. Sticky is going to go first, which will hopefully give Rainey some time to figure something out, somehow communicate with Kate and Constance, and hopefully everything will turn out for the best. All right. I hope to come back tomorrow and read some more.